At 66, Emma Thompson finally speaks about Alan Rickman. There are famous friendships, and then there are the ones nobody fully understands until one person is gone. I always thought Alan Rickman was the man with the unforgettable voice, the icy stare, and that mysterious smile that could say more than an entire page of dialogue. What surprised me was discovering that, away from the cameras, the people who loved him barely talked about his talent. They talked about his kindness. And when Emma Thompson finally began speaking more openly about him years after his death, it became clear that the greatest role Alan Rickman ever played wasn't on a movie screen at all. Most people remember one word. Always. For Harry Potter fans, that single word changed everything they thought they knew about Severus Snape. Suddenly every cold glance, every harsh sentence, every quiet pause made sense. Alan Rickman had known the truth about Snape long before the audience did. Years before the final films. Years before readers reached the last pages. He carried that secret for nearly a decade. But here's the part one didn't know. While millions admired him for keeping one fictional secret, the people closest to him were quietly protecting a very real one. We'll come back to that. Because to understand why Emma Thompson still struggles to talk about Alan Rickman, you have to start much earlier. Alan Rickman didn't grow up looking like someone destined for Hollywood. He was born in West London in 1946 to a family that worked incredibly hard but never had much money. His father worked in a factory. His mother somehow held everything together while raising 4 children. Then life changed almost overnight. Alan was only 8 years old when his father died from lung cancer. Think about that for a second. At 8 years old, you're still trying to understand the world. Losing a parent at that age leaves questions that never really disappear. I've always wondered if that's why so many of Rickman's performances felt like they carried hidden sadness. He rarely played characters who cried loudly. His pain lived underneath the surface. Almost like someone who had learned very young that grief doesn't always announce itself. Ironically, the voice that later became one of the most recognizable voices in cinema wasn't something he was simply born with. People assume Alan Rickman naturally sounded, well, like Alan Rickman. Not exactly. As a young man he struggled with a speech issue that affected the movement of his jaw. Teachers criticized his delivery. One even compared his voice to something trapped inside a drainpipe. That could have ended the dream. Instead, he practiced. Again. And again. For years. I love stories like this because they remind me that what we call natural talent is often years of invisible work nobody ever sees. Eventually that slow, measured voice became his trademark. The very thing people once criticized became the reason audiences couldn't stop listening. What's even stranger is that acting wasn't his first career. If you had met Alan Rickman in his early 20s, there's a good chance you wouldn't have found him on a film set. You would have found him designing. He studied graphic design, became successful enough to open his own studio, and by all accounts could have stayed there for the rest of his life. A perfectly respectable career. A predictable future. Except, there was always something quietly pulling him somewhere else.